right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I just released you all from the waiting room. So as everyone is trickling in, feel free to pop in the chat, say where you're coming in from. I'm coming from Buffalo, New York. Um, and yeah, I would love to hear if you've come to one of these webinars before. It's kind of funny. I was just at a conference this past weekend and someone said they recognized me from one of these webinars. So, I'm just talking to a screen and I don't know who's behind there. So it's always like nice to hear that. So yeah, just pop in the chat where you're coming in from. If we run into each other in person, say hi. I would love that. Um, all right, I am going to make sure that people can get in. I'm going to turn off the waiting room. Great. And then this is a really big group. This is like our biggest signups we've ever had. So it's going to be a really big group. So just to keep us all on track, just please mute yourself. I have it set to mute on entry, but please don't unmute yourself. Because actually I think I just turn that off so you can't unmute yourself. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. So go off in the chat and communicate over there, but we just want to make sure that our lovely presenters are not distracted while we're talking. There's already 150 of you guys in here, which is absolutely amazing. So hi again and welcome. And I think that is pretty much it. I am really going to keep this super short so that I know that Megan has a lot to say and we're going to leave enough time for questions. So if you can, I'm going to be monitoring. My name is Sam. I'm from the Nomadic Mat team, by the way. Maybe you've seen me before if you've been to one of our webinars before. But I'm going to be monitoring the chat so that they can focus on presenting. So if you have a question, like feel free to pop off in the chat as things are going. Just kind of call out in all caps, just question, and then like write your question so I can like easily see, and I'm going to be keeping track. And then once they're done, I'm going to ask them all of your lovely questions. And I know they have some case scenarios that they're going to be going through. So yeah, we're hopefully going to get all your questions answered. I am going to keep it to, let's see, hold on. Someone asked about captions. So hold on, let me just make sure to set that. Okay. Yeah. So that's about it from me. I am going to turn it over to Megan and she's going to introduce them and we will be off.
Thanks. Actually, it's Megan Square. There's two Megans here. We'll be presenting. We're going to keep it nice and easy for you guys. We don't want to, confuse. We changed our names so that we have the same name. I'm Megan Kayada. I'm the PR specialist for InsureMyTrip. I've been with InsureMyTrip for about 3 years, a little under 3 years now. When I started, I knew nothing about travel insurance. So I was in your boat. I had no clue. I just thought it was for somebody who's older and might have somebody sick at home. But since then, I've learned a lot, and I've learned so much that I think that I would consider travel insurance for any trip, and I would definitely get a policy if I'm going overseas. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. Somebody who does know everything about, just about everything about travel insurance is Megan Walsh. She's our director of product. Megan, why don't you tell them a little bit about what you do and your team?
Yeah, sure. So I started at InsureMyTrip little over 14 years ago. Doesn't feel like it's been that long, but I was actually in the same boat too as Megan, where I didn't know what travel insurance was. I had worked in different types of insurance prior to coming there, but travel insurance was completely new to me. So I started in our customer care team, offering these plans and sort of learning everything from the base up. So it's been, there's never a boring day, and it's been a really interesting 14 years, and I've learned a lot. And our team works with many of the major travel insurance providers, sorting through all of their plans, all of the coverages, and figuring out what is the best to put on our site and offer to travelers.
Only the best for you guys. Now that I'm going to share my screen now. I have like a Little presentation that we're going to go through. I just want to, sorry, trying to get this slideshow. There we go. I don't know why it's not going. Huh. Here we go. Sorry. Okay, sorry, that was stressful. So now that we kind of got our intros out of the way, I just wanted to give you kind of a background about what InsureMyTrip is. We are an international travel insurance comparison site. We have offices here in the US and Rhode Island specifically. That's where Megan and I are joining you from. And we also have an office in Canada. We also have travel insurance in Canada. We provide travelers with travel insurance options for travel insurance companies and for policies. So that you can choose the right policy and provider for you and for your trip. So it's just basically just options that you can go through to try and figure out the options that are working best for whatever trip you're going on, forever, how long you're going on, where you're going, and that kind of stuff. And I think travel insurance can be confusing for some people. Like, what exactly is it? My interpretation of it, and has always been, you know, you're hoping for the best, but you prepare for the worst. And that's kind of what my approach, and that's where when I go on trips now, that's kind of what I think of. Like, obviously so much has gone on lately with airlines and everything like that, so I always like to have a little safety net. Megan, what is your kind of definition for travel insurance?
So it's definitely something that I consider, and you know, it may not be something that you need for every trip. But if you are spending a good amount of money traveling outside of the country or even within the country, you know, it's definitely something to consider. So travel insurance can help provide reimbursement for unexpected issues that happen while traveling, something, you know, that may cause you to have to cancel your trip or interrupt your trip while you're on it. If there's flight delays, lost baggage, emergency medical issues while you're on your trip, obviously there's a policy that needs to be followed. There's covered reasons for why you may need to cancel your trip. But again, there are many of the typical issues that you may face during travel could possibly be covered by a travel insurance policy.
So today this is kind of an overview we're going to be covering today. Types of travel insurance coverage. I picked out the main four, in my opinion, for travel insurance that everybody should kind of know about. The importance of comparing companies and policies. Price of travel insurance, that's always a big question. How much does travel insurance cost? Something we call don't check the box. We'll kind of get into that a little bit, but it's basically be careful of where you get your travel insurance. Well, and then we'll go through some real life scenarios and when you should be buying travel insurance and the benefits of purchasing through us at InsureMyTrip. Little plug there. So like I was saying, the top travel insurance coverages or plans or whatever that I like to highlight are comprehensive plans, emergency medical and emergency evacuation, cruise specific, and cancel for any reason. And we're going to go through kind of all of these step by step to kind of give you an idea of what each of these covers. So first, we're going to start with comprehensive plans. Megan, I like to think of comprehensive plans as like the most bang for your buck. So what can be and is usually covered under a comprehensive travel insurance plan?
That's a great question. And you can sort of think of it as a package plan. It's many different coverage packed into one plan. So in addition to trip cancellation, most comprehensive plans also offer coverages such as trip interruption, lost baggage, delayed baggage, emergency medical and dental coverage, emergency medical evacuation. And there's also very important coverage, or I should say more of an assistance service, where there's a 24-hour hotline that you can call in the event of an emergency during your trip. They can help you to find emergency medical care while you're there, help you rebook flights if there's an issue. So there's many great benefits to, not only having the insurance coverage, but also getting access to these emergency assistance benefits as well.
Yeah, it's like having your own personal assistant and
Exactly.
when you really need it. All right, so emergency medical and evacuation. I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, saying that I would always get a emergency medical plan if I'm traveling overseas. This is because, little known fact, that most domestic health insurance plans will not cover your medical bills overseas. So in the event of emergency, especially a med evac, you could be paying thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket if you do not have a emergency medical travel insurance plan. So Megan, can you break down these plans and just kind of go through what is covered in them?
Sure. So if we're talking about a travel medical policy, those are typically out of country coverage if you're traveling abroad. So first, it is helpful to know if your domestic health coverage will cover anything. And as Megan mentioned, typically it won't. And we know in most cases, Medicare will not cover you either. So with that, it is also helpful to do some research wherever you are going to see what, a typical medical expense may be if you have to go to the hospital for something, just to have an idea, because these plans do have limits that you can choose from. So as you're looking at them and doing your research, that may be helpful to choose the proper plan that will help to cover or reimburse you if something does happen during the trip.
And for medical evac, this is a big one I kind of mentioned can be purchased. Is that along with the emergency medical plan, or is it separate, or how does that work?
So emergency medical evacuation coverage, it is typically available on travel medical plans. And it's usually transportation to the nearest appropriate facility. So if you are hospitalized during your trip and they can't treat you properly there, it will help to get you to the nearest appropriate facility. And that's usually at the discretion of the insurance company, also talking to the doctors that are treating you so that, everything is being planned out. With this, it is important that you would have to arrange this through the emergency assistance service provided through the travel insurance company. But as Megan mentioned, it can be a very helpful thing because, we've seen some that are several $1,000s all the way to over $100,000 if you're, somewhere that you need to be potentially flown a good distance. So it is a very important coverage to have.
Yeah, and I think we were on a podcast recently, an Alaskan podcast, and that's one of the most expensive places to be medevaced from. So it's not just out of the country. You might want to consider this. If you're going to Alaska or somewhere that has remote destinations, then it's probably a good idea to kind of look into this and just to make sure. Another big one at InsureMyTrip specifically is cruise-specific travel insurance. Now, cruising is booming. The cruise industry is nuts lately. Different ships, new locations being added every day. And those who have cruised know that it's a vacation unlike any other. It's multi-legs. It's stopping at different ports in different countries and different excursions going on in those countries. So Megan, can you talk about what cruise insurance can cover specifically?
Sure. So yeah, typically we're looking at comprehensive plans, and we do have some on our site that are geared specifically to cruisers. And with this, it can offer coverage to if your flight is delayed and you are potentially going to miss your cruise departure. There may be missed connection benefits on there that can help to get you to the next port. It's important, I think, to do some research beforehand, to see how certain processes might work For example, if you do have to try to catch up with your cruise due to a flight delay. But there are other benefits as well that can be extremely helpful. There may be some um, inconvenience benefits where if something happens, say, there's a mechanical failure on the cruise that causes, you to lose a certain amount of uh, uh, the ship is, down for a certain amount of time. There can be some benefits that would be paid out to you just for that inconvenience. So again, it's important to read the policy, know what's available. But if you're going to be cruising, it's important to look for travel insurance.
Yeah, and it's also important to where you get your cruise insurance, right? So all cruise lines are, for the many of the big ones anyway, they also offer trip protection for a cruise. So they'll at the end, they'll ask you if you want to add insurance or get it through them. And InsureMyTrip did some research and some digging, and Megan and her product team and found there are some pretty big shortcomings for the plans that are offered through the cruise line. So what are some of those shortcomings, Megan?
Yeah, so typically we found the best and most robust coverage that you can get for cruising would be through a third-party travel insurance or a travel insurance aggregation site like ours, where you can compare many different plans. But what we saw was, the trip cancellation coverage may be very limited versus coverage that we offer, where there's many covered reasons for having to cancel your trip. Most fail to cover pre-existing conditions. The medical coverage is typically lower, if there is any medical coverage at all. Cancel for any reason, which we'll explain that more a little bit later, but is typically a waiver on the point of sale cruise plans. Versus ours that will actually reimburse your prepaid non-refundable expenses. Through the cruise plans, it usually is a credit or voucher towards future travel. They don't cover financial default of the cruise line. And I think since the pandemic, that's something that we have seen a lot of, whether, it's an airline, cruise line, tour operator. So that is something that a third-party travel insurance most likely would cover. And typically the cruise plans that you might get point of sale through the cruise line, they don't cover your full trip. So if you're, airline, you booked your airfare, an additional hotel if you're going out before or staying after, that part of your trip typically wouldn't be covered by a cruise plan. It would only just be the duration of your cruise.
Yeah, so that's kind of important too, because it's not just the cruise that can go wrong. Something can go wrong with it. There's getting there and staying there and all that stuff. So that's important. And we do have a full breakdown of, we're comparing cruise line trip protection versus third-party insurance on our website, InsureMyTrip.com. You just search cruise and it'll come up there that we list the major cruise lines and compare them to our policies for cruise. So that's could be helpful. And cancel for any reason, which Megan kind of talked about a little bit. This is another big one. I think it became really popular and really well known during the pandemic. And in short, it's basically what it sounds like. You can cancel your trip for any reason, because on most policies there's covered reasons to cancel. So Megan, why don't you explain how cancel for any reason is different from trip cancellation coverage specifically?
Yeah, that's a really great question and a good distinction to make. So trip cancellation coverage is available on all comprehensive plans, and that reimburses you for your prepaid non-refundable expenses in the event that you have to cancel for a covered reason. And those covered reasons are listed within the policy documentation. The top covered reasons would be an unexpected death, injury, illness of your traveling companion. Most will also cover those things for a non-traveling family member as well. Um, as also hospitalization or death of a family member, also unforeseen natural disasters. And again, those are just a few of the covered reasons. Most plans will have an entire list of reasons that they would cover for you to cancel your trip.
And for CFAR, cancel for, we call it CFAR, cancel for any reason. What are some of the reasons, and how does that differ? What are the reasons to cancel that you can use for cancel for any reason coverage?
Sure, it's really exactly how it sounds. So this type of coverage gives you the most flexibility. It's typically an optional coverage that you have to be eligible to purchase along with your comprehensive plan. But it can give you the ability to cancel your trip in the event that you just don't want to travel. So that could be fear of traveling. We saw this again a lot during the pandemic where, somebody may have a trip booked, but all of a sudden their destination becomes a hot spot, and, there's a lot of people getting sick there, and they're like, you know what, I don't feel comfortable at this point. So cancel for any reason, as long as you're eligible to be purchasing it, and also canceling your trip at least 2 days prior to departure. Then you could cancel your trip and file a claim for this coverage, and reimbursement, depending on the plan, is typically up to 50 to 75% of your prepaid non-refundable expenses. So it's not going to give you the entire amount back, but at least you're not losing your entire, what you paid for the trip.
Right. It's better than nothing, right? Something's better than nothing.
Right.
And you did mention there are some eligibility requirements. What are those, and what do those entail?
Great question. So with this, when we say time sensitive, typically that is you have to be purchasing the coverage within a certain amount of time after you make your initial payment or deposit. And typically it's 10 days to 3 weeks after making your initial payment. And it all, again, depends on the policy that you're looking at. A lot of them differ in that period that you have to be purchasing within. You have to be purchasing your coverage for the entire cost of the trip, or you can purchase it for what you have paid so far. And as you make subsequent payments, you can add those on. But you have to be insuring the full prepaid non-refundable cost of your trip in order to be eligible for that benefit. And as I mentioned before, if you are choosing to cancel your trip under the CFAR benefit, you must be canceling at least 48 hours before departure. So if you're, 2 days away from your trip, the coverage is available. If you are within 2 days of leaving, unfortunately, cancel for any reason wouldn't be an option, and you'd have to be canceling your trip for a covered reason.
Now let's get into something that is usually the first question people ask about travel insurance. How much does it cost? Because I'm already paying so much on this trip, and then I have to add travel insurance. It's going to cost me an arm and a leg. You may be surprised to learn that travel insurance, I know I was surprised to learn because I thought it was this big expense, but it's really kind of really affordable. Generally, we don't like to give specifics because every plan is different, but generally it will cost anywhere between 4 and 10% of your total prepaid non-refundable trip costs. So say your trip is $1,000. You could potentially pay between $40 and $100 for a travel insurance policy, depending on coverage. And there are many variables when it comes to the cost of a policy. Megan, why don't you get into some of those things that can impact cost of a policy?
Yeah, I want to say the two big factors when looking at the cost of a policy are going to be the age of the travelers and the cost of the trip. And that's especially when we're talking about a comprehensive plan. So the more expensive the trip and the older the travelers, most likely the more expensive the policy is going to be. But some other variables here too. How long the trip is, that can be a factor, the number of travelers. And we've even seen some plans where, you know, the destination that you're going to may factor in, and stuff like that. So with that, it can all factor in and determine the cost of the policy.
Yeah, I know my mom actually is going on a trip and she's like, how much is it gonna, I'm like, I don't know how much it's gonna, you have to put the info in. You can go on our website and get a quote and find out how much it is, and depends on what you want to pick. So I even have to talk my own mother through it. So it's always a big question. But on that topic, travel insurance policy prices and their rates are regulated. So you won't find it the same policy on a different site for cheaper. Is that right, Megan?
Correct. As you said, the prices are regulated. The insurance companies have to file their rates. So, you know, you can't have it the same plan here and the same plan here and have them be different prices. If there is a difference in price, typically it's some kind of difference in coverage.
Right. So with that in mind, it is at the point, it's important to compare on our site, because while you won't find the same exact policy cheaper on another site, you will find different levels of coverage, which we give you the opportunity to sift through and figure out what works best for you. And that's why we like to, when it comes to getting your trip protection, we like to warn travelers against checking the box. So don't check the box. So what this means is that little box that pops up at the end of when you're booking through a cruise line, an airline, a booking site, that says, do you want to add trip protection to this? And yes, it's convenient. You can say, oh yeah, of course, it's only like a few extra dollars. I would love to add this cheap travel insurance policy to my plan. However, you may not be getting and you're likely not going to be getting the coverage that you think you're getting. So Megan, why should travelers avoid checking the box?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. And I think we've really seen this type of point of sale policy grow. And it's really for, you know, some of the reasons that we discussed for when we were looking at cruise plans. The coverage may not be as robust. There may be some coverage that's not available through a point of sale plan versus one you may find on a third-party travel insurance comparison site. And so, yeah, it's really important to know what you're getting. And it can be really hard to see that through the point of sale plans. So, so yeah, it's really important to know what you're getting. And if you have concerns about covering your entire trip, so from doorstep to doorstep, whether it be flights, a cruise, tours, accommodations, hotels, it's important to also compare to a third-party travel insurance, such as what you find on our site, because you might actually get a much more robust policy for potentially a cheaper price.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I always tell, and I like to say, be cautious of convenience, like everything else in this world. Be careful. You might not be getting what you think you're getting. So I know we've given you, I think, a lot of information. So I kind of wanted to go through some real life scenarios that could happen to any number of travelers, any one of you. So I'm going to kind of go through, I put together a few real life scenarios to ask Megan if it's covered or not covered by travel insurance. I did want to make a quick note though. You will hear our responses say may and could be covered because, like we've been saying, travel insurance, every policy is different. We can't possibly give specifics in every policy. We'll be here all day. So when we're giving these answers, whether it's covered or not, these are potentially could be covered or likely will not be covered. So just wanted to give you a heads up. Let's get into some scenarios. So scenario one, you're at the airport and your flight keeps getting delayed due to weather. Megan, can a travel insurance policy cover this and how?
So yeah, travel insurance can cover that. Comprehensive plans have coverage called travel delay. If you're delayed for a certain number of hours and meet all the requirements, it can help to reimburse for additional costs you may face, such as meals, additional accommodations, excuse me, also transportation during the delay if needed. So it can be extremely helpful if you do find yourself facing some additional expenses because of a weather delay during your trip.
Seems like it's happening more and more lately. The weather has just been nuts, and it can cause a ripple effect across the country too. So even if you're not delayed in your area, it could be delayed where you're going, and it's a mess. Another big one has been luggage. Your luggage doesn't make it to your vacation destination, or it is delayed. Is that covered or not covered, Megan, or can it be covered or not covered?
So comprehensive plans have both travel baggage delay coverage and also baggage loss. So with baggage loss, coverage may be provided for reimbursement of items that were in your luggage. And it's important to look at the policy because typically there's going to be per item limits up to a set maximum limit. And there also may be limitations on expensive items such as jewelry, electronics. So it's very important to look at that. And it also, some may require there to be receipts for items that were in your luggage, or, it may be helpful to take a picture of everything that you packed, just as, proof of what you had with you. And that can be helpful in the event of a claim. With baggage delay, if your bag is delayed, it's typically between 12 to 24 hours, depending on the plan. It can help you to or reimburse you for necessities that you need to purchase, an additional pair of clothes, some toiletries necessities while you're waiting for your bag to arrive. So those two coverages can be extremely helpful if your bag doesn't arrive on time or it is lost during the flight.
It's always a gamble, right? With my bag's going to get there. And something I kind of wanted to bring up, because this actually just happened, where the airlines issued, or the DOT issued new airline refund rules, where they are going to have to provide automatic refunds for airlines if they cancel, significantly change a flight, significantly delay checked bags, or fail to provide extra services that were purchased. So, and you might be thinking like, well, what do I need, delay coverage for? What do I need baggage coverage for? Like we've been kind of saying, with a comprehensive plan, it covers much more than just what happens during a flight or before a flight. So you can cover your entire vacation, not just the flight. And with the baggage, for example, the airlines have to provide a refund of the baggage fee, not what was inside the bags and all that stuff. So just kind of like Megan was saying, kind of do your research, know what is covered in your plan, and know that a comprehensive plan through a third party will cover much more than just what the airlines are required to give you. This is another one that was been in the news. You miss your cruise or your tour departure because a flight is canceled or delayed. Megan, is this covered?
So this can be covered under a plan. Typically this would be a missed connection benefit. And as we mentioned before, this is the one that can help you to catch up to your cruise if your flight was delayed for a covered reason. Typically it's going to be, a weather delay, a mechanical delay, something like that. But it can be extremely helpful. One thing to mention, I know as we've talked to different travelers and cruisers, one thing that they've mentioned is arriving for your cruise a day or two ahead of time. So, I think a lot of these issues may be potentially, could be not an issue if you're planning things out and arriving ahead of time. But if you are arriving the day of departure, this can be a helpful coverage just in case.
Yeah, and this is another one, like we said, there was a situation where some cruise passengers were stranded after their tour left, their cruise left without them because they were on an excursion. Megan, why is this not covered?
Yeah, this is a very unfortunate situation. And, you know, it seemed like these travelers, unfortunately, were at the mercy of the tour provider. But unfortunately, with travel insurance, this situation would not be covered. It it's not covered if your tour company, or, you know, just if you lose track of time and you don't make it back to the ship in time, and they leave without you. But there are emergency assistance benefits that we mentioned earlier, that may be able to help you if you need to book a flight, or, you know, be in communication to catch up to the cruise. They may be able to help you there. You'd still be responsible for any additional costs, but at least you have somebody on your side trying to help you.
I'm gonna skip this one because we kind of touched on that a little bit. But for this one, this is an interesting one. You trip and fall leaving a pub in Ireland after a day of drinking and need to seek medical attention. Megan, can this be covered?
So one thing to note with travel insurance is typically if you are under the influence, it's not going to be covered. That is typically just a general exclusion in the plan. So if you trip and fall and you've been drinking, and you need to seek medical attention, it's typically not going to be covered.
This is another one that people have been kind of talking about. A war conflict breaks out near your destination and you no longer feel safe traveling. Megan, can this be covered?
So sort of like the last one we were just talking about, war is typically an exclusion on the policy. So with this, if you are planning a trip somewhere where, you know, there is the potential for war to break out or unrest, it is important to look at cancel for any reason. And as we described before, that is if you know, something comes up, you don't feel safe, you no longer want to travel there. At least you're not losing the full amount of what you paid. This can help to reimburse up to 75% of your prepaid non-refundable costs.
And just one last one, a quick one. There's a natural disaster at your destination during your trip and you need to get out.
Great question. So it's going to differ by plan, and many may offer coverage. So with this, if your destination is in the potential line of a storm, or being hit prior to departure, it can be covered in several different ways. Many plans are going to have coverage if there is, you know, a hurricane that comes in, wipes out your accommodations, makes your destination uninhabitable. There's coverage for that. Some may also have specific hurricane warning coverage. This is typically a time-sensitive benefit, and there are some eligibility requirements for that. But it can offer you coverage to cancel your trip if your destination is within or under a hurricane warning within a certain time. It's usually a day to 3 days prior to departure. So that can be very helpful if you are traveling during the summertime to somewhere that is, you know, prone to hurricanes. But again, it's important to read the policy and know what's covered, know the requirements to be able to be eligible for that coverage.
Okay. Hurricane season's coming. Quickly, I'm just going to mention this really quickly, and then we'll move on to our last slide. When to buy. We usually recommend buying as soon as you put money down on a trip. And like Megan said, you can add to it as you go. As you pay more towards a trip, you can add more to your insurance policy as you go. So the earlier you buy, the more options and time sensitive benefits that will be available to you, like cancel for any reason. Also, you know, if there's unforeseen issues or storms or disasters, if you buy insurance after them, you're not going to be covered. So buy as soon as you can, basically. And then you can also buy last minute. I wanted to say that, but you won't have all the frills and all of the coverages that you might think you have. Now let's kind of talk about why you should buy through us. Like I said, comparison is super helpful, especially when you don't know anything about travel insurance. So be able to go through and see what options there are available. We have our customer care agents are all licensed and can answer any of your questions that you might have. You give them a call. I don't understand. Is this covered? Is this not? We have a live chat option, which is super helpful. We also have something called Anytime Advocates. Now, we don't file claims through us, but in the claims process, if there's an issue or you have a question, the Anytime Advocates can kind of guide you through. Can you kind of explain what they do quickly, Megan?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think it's really important to note that once you purchase a policy from us, it's not, sort of like you're, we don't, help after that. If you are purchasing something and you do have a question that comes up, you can call our customer care center. And as Megan mentioned, they're all licensed in all 50 states. And with our Anytime Advocate program, if something does happen, you are filing a claim with the company, they are available to help. And it can be, just a general question. I'm trying to submit a claim. Do you have any recommendations or helpful suggestions? Also, if you have a claim and it's being denied, they can take a look through it and also reach out to the insurance company to better understand, what the situation is, why it's being denied. And, if it is something that they find is, potentially something that should be covered, they can help to try to, act as an advocate and work with the company to see if it may be something, misunderstanding, something that should be covered. Or if it is something that is rightfully being denied, then they can also, get a better understanding and work with you to help understand why it was denied.
Super helpful, I think. Again, it's confusing, so we're here to help. Anyway, that's our main presentation. This is just our email address, and I think that they'll be sending it out through Nomadic Matt as well. Also, we have our socials here at InsureMyTrip.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all X, whatever it is now, all the things. So that is it for us for presentation. So we can do questions now.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was absolutely fantastic. I will say I've never seen the chat popping up with so many questions. So I will just say right now, yes, we are going to be sending out their information when we send out the recording. So I know right now we are not going to be able to get to all the questions because I literally have 3 pages of questions that I've taken notes on right now. So I am going to keep, like I said, I'm going to keep us right around to 8 o'clock. So I know I won't be able to get to everyone. There was a lot of people that asked specific questions. There was a lot of people that asked on the same. So, and I think I'm going to, yeah, I'm just going to jump in and I'm just going to say, in advance that I know we won't get to them all, and please reach out to them and they can answer it more, or the Anytime Advocates, like they said, to ask your specific questions. So we want to make this as helpful for as the biggest amount of people possible while we have them. So one thing that so many people asked about was annual travel insurance, if there are annual policies, and also kind of related to that, I'm trying to like lump everything together, but what if you are like nomadic or on the road for a year or two? Are there policies that include like more general health insurance as opposed to like not just if something bad happens, but like checkups kind of thing? So I guess those are kind of two separate but related questions there.
Yeah, so really great questions. And we can start talking about the annual plans first. So we do offer some annual coverage for, I should say, annual multi-trip coverage. Typically, that's going to be in the travel medical space. So if you're taking multiple trips abroad each year, that can help to cover those trips for emergency medical and emergency medical evacuation. At this time, we don't have any annual comprehensive plans, but I think it's always important to look at those, from a single trip basis. And, a lot of times every trip is different. So, you may have concerns for one trip that you don't have for another. So you may be able to find, I guess, coverage for each of those trips, uh, looking at just single trip plans versus a multi-trip annual. Um, but again, with the travel medical plans, we do offer uh, multi-trip annual.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, and to answer your question about the nomadic coverage and policies that will, I guess, cover more typical like health insurance, that's not typically what we're seeing in travel insurance. It's more of emergency medical coverage that would be available there. So things for routine doctor's visits, that's not typically what you're going to find in travel insurance. It's going to be, again, more of things on an emergency basis. So if you get sick during your trip and you have to see a doctor or something like that. So yeah, that's more of typically what you're going to find.
Okay. Yeah, for everyone that was asking about that, I do know that it exists. It is out there. But like you'll have to do your own looking into that. We do have a lot. We also have on the Nomadic Mat website a ton of stuff on travel insurance too. So I'll drop some links and we'll include those when we send up the follow-up about more of these kind of things. Okay, great. Thank you. So, okay, another one, a lot of people are asking for, a lot of travel insurance companies don't cover if you're over 70 or it is a lot more expensive, and the same with pre-existing conditions. So do you have any, I guess, thoughts there?
Yeah, as we mentioned, with travel insurance, unfortunately, the older you get, the premiums are gonna be higher. So there is coverage available with comprehensive plans. Most of them you can buy up to, I think our site quotes up to age 99, but it is going to affect the price of the plan. So to the next question about pre-existing conditions, that's a really great one, and that can get really in depth. That it can be a lot of very specific questions about, certain illnesses, things like that. So when it comes to that, it's something we typically recommend that if you have a certain scenario or question in mind, to talk to our licensed customer care team. But just in general, comprehensive plans typically have a pre-existing condition exclusion. But if you are purchasing within the time sensitive period, so sort of the same thing as cancel for any reason, within 1 to 3 weeks of your initial payment, there may be a pre-existing condition waiver that is added to the policy. Again, like you must be medically fit to travel, so you can't be in a situation where somebody's in the hospital or, is sick at the time. But with that waiver, the pre-existing condition exclusion would typically be waived, and there may be coverage for pre-existing conditions. So again, it can be a lot of different questions, and it may be something you need to go a little bit more in depth with. So I would always recommend calling our customer care team and asking those types of questions. But the long and the short of it, there may be coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Thank you. Great. Yeah, some people are asking me specifics about that, and I definitely can't answer that. So for sure, go to their customer care team for your like specific questions. All right. So keeping on going, this is all kind of like I kind of trying to group them. So this is a lot talking about like policies. I know you talked about like booking or purchasing travel insurance as soon as you can. But can you say you book, you get a plan as soon as possible, but then you maybe then you buy more things related to the trip? Can you increase your limit? And can you also, someone else asked, can you cover like less than the trip was? Like say you paid 6,000, but you only want to cover half of that. Like, is that a thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, it definitely, you can buy the insurance policy when you make that initial payment, cover that amount. And as you make subsequent payments towards different parts of your trip, you would just want to call us and add those amounts on. Obviously, it's as the trip cost goes up that you're insuring, the cost of the policy is going to increase as well. But if you have certain coverages, such as the pre-existing condition waiver or cancel for any reason, you're required to insure those additional amounts to keep those coverages. So yes, you can insure a certain amount and then increase as you go. For your second question, insuring only a portion of the trip cost is technically you can do that, but certain coverages, such as cancel for any reason, that require you to insure that full prepaid non-refundable amount, you wouldn't be eligible for that coverage, but you could still purchase the plan. Obviously, it's only going to cover the amount that you have actually insured.
Right. While you mentioned cancel for any reason coverage, someone asked, are you able to just purchase that? Or is it, I thought it was always attached to a plan, but I guess, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for what we offer on our site, it is always attached to a comprehensive policy. So you'll see, the different policy options available, and cancel for any reason will typically be a buy-up option on a comprehensive plan.
Let's see here. Ooh, I know we talked a lot about flights, but what if you are, a few people asked about car rental coverage. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are rental car, we call it the collision damage waiver, available on plans as a buy-up. And what that is coverage for damage done to the rental vehicle. The policies are not going to cover liability. So damage that you may do to, if there's an accident and another vehicle is damaged or property is damaged, it's not going to cover that. It's going to cover damage just to the rental vehicle. So it is a buy-up on some plans. And yeah, so I would say, if you're renting a vehicle, it may be something to consider. But also one important thing to mention there is certain countries may not accept this coverage. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We've seen it go back and forth. So if you are going to another country renting a vehicle, it's important to just do some homework and check and see if that country will accept the benefits on the policy.
Yes, and to this point, a few people were asking about differences between credit card insurance that's offered through their credit cards and through like a travel insurance. And I actually went to a whole session on car rental insurance like yesterday. So I will say that this is one where some credit cards do offer really great insurance. But I know, speaking from my experience, that credit card, what they don't offer is comprehensive medical coverage. But if you could chime in a little bit on the difference between what a credit card offers and what travel insurance offers, that would be helpful too, because that came up a few times.
We actually had the same question. We did something similar to what we did for cruise insurance and what cruise lines offer. We have a whole page on our site about credit cards and what different credit cards offer for insurance or trip protection versus somewhere like InsureMyTrip, for example. So we did that comparison. If you do search credit cards on InsureMyTrip, you can find that information. But Megan, if you want to give like a quick overall your thoughts on that for now.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you do have benefits through a certain credit card, it's important to get the actual documentation of what is covered. Because a lot of times I know in talking with people, they're like, oh yeah, my credit card covers that. And it may not be as robust as you expect. Also, typically credit cards will only cover the portions of the trip that are booked using that credit card. So with that, it could be limited if you're booking something with a credit card, booking something through another payment method. So it's just important to know what you're covered for, what portions of your trip are covered. And with a third party travel insurance plan, you can cover doorstep to doorstep, the full thing, the full cost of the trip under one policy, so that you're not worrying about like, oh, if this is covered here and this is covered here, does this cover the same reasons as this? And it's just sort of all packaged into one. Maybe a little bit easier to get through a claim, God forbid something were to happen.
Yes, I will say I have great credit card insurance and I still always buy travel insurance, just because it is comprehensive and it is so affordable. So it's just that peace of mind, like better safe than sorry. Everyone on our team gets it, so, and we're avid travelers. So that says something,
Yeah.
you don't want to have to need it, but when you need it, you're super glad that you paid that $50 or whatever it was, even if it's 100. Um, so yeah, okay. A few people asked about group tours. Someone was asking, so what about some group tours will offer insurance like through them, I guess maybe similar to how airlines do. And what are the pros and cons of using that versus like a separate policy, like getting your own through Insure My Trip, for example? Um, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, as with everything else, it's important to know, what's covered. Do you have adequate medical coverage, or I should say emergency medical coverage, through a group plan? It potentially could be a little bit easier, I guess, if you do have multiple people on the same policy, just in case, something happens, everyone needs to file a claim. But everyone's concerns are different. So if you have certain concerns that may not be covered under a group policy, it may behoove you to look at a third party travel insurance plan, to get those additional benefits that you might need.
It seems like it all comes down to read the policy, no matter
Yeah,
where,
it's like
right?
It
reading
is.
fine print. It's super important, and that's why I like like even I had to call our customer care line because I was confused. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what was covered in our policies or versus another policy. So I get it. It's a lot. So it's super helpful to have somebody to help.
Definitely.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great resource. I have certainly read a lot of them too, and it definitely can be mind-numbing at times, but it's super important to read them. So, okay, let me see if I can get one more question before we wrap it up. Like I said, sorry to everyone whose questions I didn't get to. I tried to kind of like get general feel for what everyone was asking based on the repeated questions to answer the most people as possible. But again, please contact them, contact their customer care people. We're going to be sending out this recording, and so you can go through it again. And then yeah, let me pull out one last one and end on a okay. Actually, a few people asked about this one too. So, and you kind of covered it a bit, but what about emergency evacuation in the case of political unrest or outbreak of violence? Like, is this commonly covered, or is this something like cancel for any reason that you have to look for separately?
So some plans may actually offer benefits for it's typically it would be called like political and natural disaster evacuation. And as long as the uh, as long as it's able to be arranged and someone's actually able to come in and get you out of there, usually they'll help you get to the nearest place of safety. And there is some benefit limit as well in there that they will cover up to. But it's available on some plans. So as you're comparing them, if you're coming to our site, I would say it would be the political and natural disaster evacuation benefit that you would want to look at and, read the details of. And, I think this sort of leads into just one general thing with our site that's really great is we allow you to come in, you just put in the information for your trip, the travel dates, travelers' ages, where you're from, where you're going, and you can you see all of the different plans that are available and you can compare them side by side. We offer it set up so that it's easy to just click on the different benefits, see what's covered in a pretty simple way. And as Megan mentioned, also speaking with our licensed travel insurance reps, if there's anything, specific questions that you have, or, just need help understanding it all. So it's a really great site and service to have.
Yeah, and I think too, another thing to mention is we have a lot of educational pages. So if you have a specific question, for example, like I do it all the time. I send Megan information from my website. I'm like, I'm writing a pitch on this. Is this accurate or whatever? So I just sent one on concert tickets for if you're traveling for Taylor Swift, if you get a travel insurance plan, you could include the cost of the ticket in there. So there's all these little nuances for a trip. So if you have any questions or about specific destinations or whatever, you can search that on our website as well and get that breakdown of information about what emergency medical coverage is and any of the kind of coverages you have questions about. You can just punch it in the search bar and it will give you a bunch of educational articles and information as well.
Yeah, that's great. I have read a lot of your articles and they are super helpful and comprehensive. So can attest to that. Maybe I'll send out when I send out the email, like a link to the FAQs or something like that. Just that's a good place for people to start. So yeah, any last words of wisdom from either of you, I guess, before we all sign off?
Mine are always don't check the box and know what you're getting and just do your research. Figure it. I mean, we kind of make it easy for you to compare and contrast the different plans, but it's super important, especially you don't want to be on a trip and come home and be like, oh my God, I thought I was covered for that and I wasn't. And that's the worst feeling. So definitely do your research. And I think that's what I have to say, Megan.
Yeah. Just again, thinking about it, like I know my dad's traveling in the next week and I bought a policy for him. Know what your, say, domestic health coverage is going to cover, what it's not going to cover. Do your research as you're booking travel, and just come to our site and compare what's available. You can email yourself a quote so that, if you're just looking now and you want to remember what's available and come back later to purchase, you can do that. So it's a really great site and a lot of really great people behind it. So
Awesome. Yeah. Well, and we have two of them right here. So thank you guys both. Really appreciate sharing all of your expertise. I see that the chat is really popping off. Thanking you guys, and really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your time. And thanks to everyone for coming and for your great questions. And like I said, please reach out to their team. Feel free to email. I will send out the email and with more information. And yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of their day or evening wherever you are in the world. Have a lovely time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Sign off
you.
now.
thanks everyone. Happy travels.
Thanks.